Welcome back to the Popular Man Podcast. I'm your host, Jay. With me today, I have my always loyal co-host. I got DeLon with me. What's up, DeLon?
Howdy, partners.
We have the contributor from SoFlo Sound. We got the homie Tommy with us. What's up, Tommy?
Greetings, everyone.
And then we got the man, the myth, the legend. We got Jairus joining us today. What's up, Jairus?
What it do?
This is the first installment of our album club, something kind of like a book club, where we're gonna sit down and talk about a album from the past, maybe a more modern album, or even maybe an album from the 90s. The album that we'll be discussing today will be Food and Liquor by Lupe Fiasco. Lupe Fiasco released his album back in the I think it was around the mid 2000s. It was his debut album, met with a lot of critical acclaim, with guest features such as Jill Scott, Jay-Z. Guys, what do you remember about this album when it first released? What memories do you have of it? The age you were when you heard it, and how you felt about Lupe early on.
When I first heard Kick Push, I think it was on AM MTV in the morning. I was getting ready to go to school. It was 2006 to be specific as well. And I was like, man, I was skateboarding at the time. And I was like, this is a cool song. This guy's a skateboarder rapper. And I thought the song was cool. I didn't know it had a deeper meaning. But, it was a cool story about a guy, his girl, and his board. And I just remember watching it that morning. It was nostalgia almost, like listening to Kick Push.
I know, like I told y'all earlier before we even started, that my first introduction to Lupe Fiasco was listening to, what's that album called? God. No. When I heard Superstar, that was my first introduction to Lupe Fiasco, hearing it on 106 in Park, watching the video. Absolutely adored and loved it, which caused me to go listen to The Cool. Now, my first introduction to Food and Liquor, because at that time, you don't really if I was at that age, I didn't think to myself, I like this album, so let me go look up all the albums in the artist catalog. It wasn't until I got Pandora Radio and Kick Push came on Pandora Radio. I'm like, oh, that's Lupe. I'm like, Kick Push. I'm like, oh, this is a very cool, catchy song about, like you said, a guy riding a skateboard. I wasn't a skateboarder. I wanted to skateboard. So that's why I was like, oh, this is real dope. This is a nice little story that I could follow along pretty easily. I'll have to go listen to the album. And I think I was late to the game. I didn't hear it when it first came out. I think, like I said, the first time I heard was The Cool. So naturally I didn't hear it when it first released. I ended up listening to the album in middle school, and I absolutely loved it. I remember early on thinking to myself, wow, Lupe Fiasco is just clear of anything else I was listening at that time in terms of just storytelling, raw emotion that he poured on the track, like on songs like He Say, She Say. At that point, I had never heard anybody do what he was doing on songs. Closest things in terms of painting relatable pictures might have been Kanye at the time, but just pure rapping. At that point, I hadn't listened to anybody who could wow me in the aspect. And I thought to myself, wow, this guy is really, really, really good at this rapping thing. So what about you, DeLon? What was your first encounter with this album?
So, my first encounter with Lupe was, as many people were, the Touch the Sky music video. One of the best music videos, the most vivid. I remember that music video, probably frame for frame. But yeah, Lupe immediately had my favorite verse on an amazing song as it is, with an amazing beat and all that kind of stuff. He just came in smooth as hell in the video. But yeah, I was I was also in my skateboarder phase. I think everyone had a skateboarder phase, or when they were wanting to be a skateboarder. It honestly broke my heart years later when Lupe said he didn't really skate. So that was a little something. I mean, honestly, to that point, the only Chicago rappers I knew were Kanye and Common. And Kanye was one of my favorite rappers at that time. So that was just a good time period, especially because I was living in Texas, I think after Katrina at that time. So everything was just, that was also Mike Jones there. That was also Paul Walk, Millionaire. So it was very Houston for me at that moment. But yeah, I'm glad introduced me to more Midwest music.
Hold that, just a little off topic. You used to listen to the Millionaire?
Come on now. I lived in Houston. I lived in Houston in 05.
That's why you my boy, DeLon. That's why you my boy. Tommy, what about you, man? What was your first encounter with this album?
So my first encounter with Food and Liquor, I was late to the party because I was born in 2000. So when it first dropped, I could probably barely even form a sentence at that point. But my first Lupe song that I do remember hearing was kind of Somebody Superstar. And I remember, this is really catchy. Fast forward like 9 years later, when I'm in high school, a lot of the music that I started listening to was because of my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And he had like a random playlist that he played in the morning. It was like Young Thug, Future. But one time he played Kick Push, and I'm like, yo, this is really freaking good. Where the hell is this from? So once I was able to get like a Spotify account, I found the album and I listened to it, and I was late as hell to it, but listening to it, I felt some type of way that I hadn't felt before, like listening to an album. So I still rock with it to this day.
That's a beautiful feeling. And like, I want to ask you this: how did that? It actually leads into the next question I want to ask. How did the album age for you? You say you listen to it to this day. Does it sound just as good, or is there some outdatedness to this album at all to you?
You know what? Honestly, running it back, like in preparation for this, I will say that at least on the production side of things, everything sounds incredible. I still think. Just looking at like the list of producers, there wasn't any really big names at the time that were using trendy sounds, but it wasn't to the point where it sounded too heady. Like it was a really good mix of, like pop appeal, but also like jazzy, very introspective kind of melodies. I actually didn't know the Neptunes produced one of the songs, and that's honestly the song that's aged the worst for me, but it still sounds great. Honestly, front to back, it sounds great, especially topically. A lot of the topics still apply to today.
And I know, like for me personally, like you're talking about the production standpoint, I think it's the point that they didn't use any pop. Like he didn't go for like a popular sound on the project. He just went for what he thought suited this track, and as a result, the music wasn't trendy for its time, so the music was able to live in today. Because I can listen to the album all the time. That's like we talked about on the podcast episode this week. That was my favorite debut album from any artist. Hearing it for the first time, it felt fresh, it felt new. Listening to it today, I wouldn't guess that it was like 12 years, 15 years. I can't remember exactly how long it's been, 12 or 15 years long since it first came out. The sound's still pretty fresh. Even the topics, the things he's talking about, they are so applicable today on American terrorists. He say, she say, everybody knows someone or is someone who didn't grow up in a home with an involved father. Then you look at what's my other favorite song? American Terrorist, He Say, She Say, and there's another song I listen to so often. It's like I can't remember the name of the song off the top of my head. I'm gonna look at the track list in a little while. But yeah, there's just so many things he talk about. Sadly, that's because he's talking about like social commentary and racial issues and divides, and also how the government doesn't really do its job. It's amazing and sad how much of the things he talk about is applicable to today, that he could come out with those same raps, maybe on different production, and you'll think to yourself like, okay, he's addressing things that's happening in this day and age. Jairus, how do you feel about this album, how it's standing the test of time?
All right, so every now and then I always just go back to listen to the cool, and I like the intro of it because I'm like a big fan of like smaller artists, so I like Matthew at the time was very small, and then Sarah Green. But for me, it aged good, social wise. But like I can't listen to it sometimes because it feels really the sound feels really outdated for me. And the only songs I find myself just going back to are some of the ones you guys listed. I feel like some of the messages, if he wasn't rapping as I call it, or just getting the message across on some of the songs, and most songs he does, but you won't know what he's talking about because he's that lyrical. I just can't find myself to go back to him. And like Daydreaming, like that's one of my favorite like songs ever. And so why is because the message of it, American Terrorist, the message of it, the intro, just that's my introduction to him. So the message of it. Some songs just fell to the wayside for me. The Cool, actually one of the greatest songs, fell to the wayside for me a little bit. It's simply because just some of the messages I'm not feeling that, or maybe applicable at the time that's going on right now.
I'll say like Sunshine. I kind of like looking back at like track list now. Sunshine, yeah, I guess it doesn't have the freshest sound, like not the most modern sounding sound. And also the song that was produced by the Neptunes was "I Gotcha." I definitely aged the worst, like you said, Tommy. The song I was trying to think of earlier, I was talking about songs that had like very applicable messages that still pertain to this day. The song I listen to probably the most is "Hurt Me Soul." That's probably my favorite song on there. Like from the changing chorus, the intricate lyrics about the issues that that man deals with, whether it be sex, drugs, greed, and all those things. How you able to tie all those things into one song? Like it's down to the production. It just pulls at my heartstrings, man. Like because of that, I can listen to that song any day, anytime, anywhere, because it's just the emotion is able to invoke in me. DeLon, what about you? How did you feel about the production and how it's held up in turn? Also, in just even Lupe Fiasco's message on this album.
I mean, honestly, so I hate to bring up J. Cole in any random room where I don't know everyone's opinions on J. Cole, because wow, what a splitting topic. But it's one of those things. I feel like this album's a perfect representation of what he was telling all the SoundCloud rapper that era about the timelessness of your music. And I feel like there's always going to be room for albums that tell stories, but not just like an overarching story like a lot of albums do, but individual situations, individual scenarios from song to song, track to track, to where each of the songs can stand by themselves. Because a lot of albums nowadays, if you don't like one song, there's a good chance you're not going to like the next 6, because they're all kind of in the same ballpark. But with Food and Liquor, each song, it kind of sounds like it could be from its own era, or you can like this song but not that song on a different day, because it's all so different and none of it is really connected, but it's all connected at the same time. And also just the timelessness of the instrumentation of a lot of the music. I feel like horns are always going to be, it's never going to sound old. Brass is never going to sound old.
Strings
never going to sound old. It's always going to sound very, very there. Drum patterns, like all that kind of stuff can get dated. But I mean, also there's no expiration date on just good rapping. So I feel like, to me, most of this album still holds up. Especially the highlights, like Superstar or Daydreaming. Daydreaming is never going to be a bad song ever. I don't care. 10 years from now, 40 years from now, that is always going to be very present and is always going to hold up.
So I want to ask you guys, if we were talking about the messaging in this album, it's clear as Lupe's saying a lot of things. He's also a notorious storyteller. He's in my mind, one of the better storytellers in rap. He can rap about literally any situation and paint it as if it's. I remember there's one song in the most recent mixtape, Pharaoh Heights. I can't remember the name of the song. I think it was Pyramids, where he's rapping about being like an international spy on the run from agents. And I'm like, wow, this could be like a score, like this could be the script to a legit movie.
I had to run that back like 5 times, like legitimately. Yes. I had to run that song back like.
Yes.
Hey, real talk. You made me excited talking about Pharaoh Heights.
Yes, bro, I love that mixtape. But getting back to Food and Liquor, Lupe wasn't at that level storytelling wise, but he was still a very, very good storyteller. And I want to ask y'all this: what is a story that you recall from this album that really, really spoke to you as the listener? Anybody who would want to go first?
I'm gonna just go first, and I probably must have the simplest story, but because I was skating, it was little stuff he was doing. Like you said, his storytelling is amazing. He was like, he slipped and fell, and he bit his tongue. Now he got to talk like this. Like I was like, damn. Like I was like, that's hot. Like, okay. And then just the story of like somebody telling him, hey, you can't skate here. I remember going out in Noxapater, Jordan. Noxapater, small as I don't know what. We up at the school trying to get it in on the playground, and like they telling us like, yo, y'all can't skate here. Like, don't skate at the school. Little stuff like that that's relatable, I find that just makes it really good for me.
Yeah, that endearing.
So relatable. Like I've slipped and fell, bit my tongue. What else does he say? about the girl. Never experienced. I was too young for all that.
Yeah.
The girl skating. So I wish I could have, but he told that story so good, you know, about them going on a date and she don't need his money or skate or skateboard because she got her own skateboard. I'm like, oh. So yeah, definitely kick push. Definitely kick push.
What about you, Tommy?
Honestly, I already talked about this multiple times in the group chat. I will say probably Daydreaming's like top 10 favorite hip hop songs ever recorded. And I guess just the story that he tells with it, I feel just because it's so abstract, but also so literal at the same time. Like he's literally just rapping about like a giant robot walking in Chicago, which like at first it's like, that's kind of weird. I don't know why he's doing that. But then like, as you dive into it, you realize he's talking about, you know, corrupt city governments, greed, poverty and crime, and how that all exists on that robot, which you can really apply it to, you know, the rap game or a city government or literally just a random building. And just the way that he presents that over such like a catchy and enjoyable beat, and his flow is just memorable as shit. Literally every single time I run through that song, I always find something new or something to appreciate just on different layers. It's kind of like when you first watch a movie where you're like, oh, that was good. But then as you rewatch it, you're like, oh wait, that was really good. And then you watch it again, you're like, oh shit, that's actually amazing. And you just keep on going back to it.
And that's the amazing part of like abstract music, where like story wise, and that's also like, I don't like always like straightforward rappers. Like I enjoy straightforward rappers, but what I really appreciate about abstract rappers, guys who are able to paint pictures in that way and like using metaphors, is that when I go back and listen to the song, it's something new to appreciate, something new to analyze, something new to take away from it. Because I know growing up, I was at that point listening to Lupe Fiasco, I could tell he was very good at rapping, but sometimes I couldn't break down or decipher everything he was saying. Daydream was a song I heard for the first time. I had zero clue what the hell he was talking about. I just knew it sounded good. It wasn't until years later when I started getting better at like deciphering and understanding metaphors and just had a better grasp of the world, I was able to kind of figure out exactly what he could even be talking about. And I think that's like the joy a lot of times of listening to his music or any artist or any lyricist, is the joy you get out of sitting down and trying to figure out what the artist is trying to do for you.
So I don't know if everyone in here has seen the show Good Times, but Good Times, that one of the kids' name was Michael. He like wanted to be a lawyer. He was like super pro black, super anti everything else. And I was really in my Michael phase at that time. Like at that time, I was just reading Dreams from My Father by Barack Obama before he was actually running for president. So I was like super into all that kind of like politics stuff as like a 10-year-old probably. So for that, American Terrorist really helped shape me. I ain't gonna lie to you. That song made me cynical as hell for the next like decade and a half. So definitely going to say American Terrorist on that one.
That's one of my favorite songs on the album. It's probably my top 3. The whole the detailing, bring the smallpox and infecting people with it to take over the land. It's such a great song. Daniel,
that beat's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that thing! I don't even know what he does with it. Like it sounds like an Asian. I don't know what the name of the exact instrument is, but he uses like an Asian like chord progression with like the central melody. And just every single time I hear it, I just go, "Oh shit!" Like that's the most recognizable song on the album for me, like by far.
Also, like Delon was talking about Matthew Santos' contribution to this song. I absolutely adore it. Like the whole, the American Terror.
Okay, yeah, now that's where I'm gonna have to disagree. Now Matthew Santos was not the one on that song for me. He was trying a lot of things, and I really appreciate it and I really respect it. It definitely, I appreciate it though.
The whole little tidbit at the end was like, black man. I was like, what do you say? Black man fool. Okay, I can't remember what it is. He gives give Indian man slot machines. Yeah, the part of the song I'm talking about towards the end. We're talking about the different things that each race is given in order to palpate them and ultimately exploit them. It reminds me a lot of a future Kendrick song Untitled 03, where he's talking about what the black man say, what the Asian man say, and I just absolutely love that part of the song. That's probably my favorite part of American Terrorist, is the end portion right there. Daniel, what about you? What's the story that connected with you on Food and Liquor?
I don't want to say necessarily connected, but what's as you know, that was my first time listening to Food and Liquor. I know that probably sounds like a rap sin, but yeah, I don't. Not that I dislike Lupe, but I just don't think I've ever cared. So I always hear you talk about Lupe and like what he meant to you, like as a rap fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I just ever really cared. But what stuck in my mind, I want to say is, since I can't talk about the song that I like purposely like repeated a whole bunch of times, He Say, She Say. And I thought about a previous conversation we had. I had meaning to hit you, but I was like, DeLon gonna be like, I'm giving away content. But it made me think of a previously. So for anybody who don't know, I'm a big J. Cole fan. I may be like super critical of J. Cole, but J. Cole to me was like my first. I've grown up loving rappers, but J. Cole to me was like the first, like, damn, like instantly he caught me. Like, to me, he represented what I was. Specifically as just like a young kid growing up, middle class family, going to like certain schools, whatever. Like Cole was just the antithesis of like, I don't know, greatness to me personally growing up. So it just made me think. We had a conversation one time. You asked me like, what do I think Cole's best story is? I gave my answers. Then you told me I was wrong, which made me confused as to why you asked me a question. But then you mentioned Lost Ones, and so the story made me think of Lost Ones. Like that's immediately where I went to. And then I'm not saying Lupe influenced Cole, but it just made me realize just how great the genre is, and how just, I don't know, it just, there's so many like gems that you can have places and then you just miss. There's like too much rap music for me to catch up to listen to everything. So listening to Lupe the first time made me feel like when I listened to Blue and X
Exile.
What's this nigga name? I can't think. Oh, thank you. Blue and X. Because someone was like, if you like that, you're gonna love this. So to me, that's what Food and Liquor was. It reminded me of things that I liked, and then it made me feel like, oh, I love this. So this is what those things were trying to be like. So that song for me was that, because I listened to it and I was like, damn. And of course, I just always enjoy good storytelling. And I don't know if that's something we really have. Of course, rappers always do that. That's never going to die out completely. But I don't know if that's something rappers do often anymore, or at least the type of rap I listen to. So I enjoyed it a lot.
I don't think there's a lot of stories being told with emotional appeal. And I think that's, and so I thought I was gonna get away with it. We went around the room and I thought I was gonna get to say, he say, she say. And I was like, okay, that's gonna be my story. Like nobody else is gonna pick that song. So shout out to you, Daniel. But that's the one I was gonna say. That song, just listening to it, walking through the parking lot on my way to school, or just listening to it at home or on a car ride I think I talked about a lot about emotion, how this album talks a lot, has a relatable factor to it. I mean, like beyond the fact of how good Lupe may rap on this album, beyond the fact of how the production may sound, how it may have aged, for me, there's so many things he says that can apply to my everyday life. And there's so many things that I feel like just apply to life in general. I grew up with my father, but listening to that song, listening to the heartache, you can hear in his voice is also how the heartache he's able to demonstrate from this perspective of the mother and the child is so apparent, to the point that it makes me feel like I grew up without dad. Like I'm feeling it as if I didn't. And the disappointment that the child and the mother display on the song is something I feel like if anybody hears it, they cannot walk away from it thinking to themselves like, I didn't feel anything hearing that. I can't imagine anybody hearing that song like, be damned how you feel about Lupe Fiasco, be damned how you feel about him as a rapper. I can't imagine anybody hearing that song, hearing about the son asking his like dad, like, why you ain't around? You know, I do my best I can. I don't really need you because my mom take care of me. Like, I can't imagine anybody hearing that song and think to themselves like, I didn't feel nothing hearing that. That's my favorite story on the album. And that's the one that strikes the greatest chord with me anytime I listen to it or anytime I talk about it. It's just an amazing show from Lupe Fiasco. And to be honest with you, it's a part of him that I feel like has been lost over time. I don't feel like we necessarily get that kind of emotional appeal from him anymore. I think he focused more so on being an elite lyricist and just the things he could do with his own words more so than evoking emotion. But we'll talk about that. Eminem. Yeah, like Eminem, like even Eminem, he has some emotional tales, and even though he has his crazy stories that you just laugh at and gag at, but he also had some stories like I'm cleaning out my closet, where he's rapping about his mom and all those things, and you think to yourself like, wow, this is heartfelt, but you don't really get that music anymore. Now it's just so much music now is more of a platform to show how good he is at rapping, more so than to show you a story or a piece of him. And I feel that's a component of music that just isn't there anymore. Like Word to Cole, when you brought up Cole, Dan, the second time Cole's been brought up today already. So it was brought up in a good light too. But that's also why Cole was like my favorite rapper at one point before I like really got into Kendrick Lamar's, was the things he said. Like I could see the things he's saying being me. Like even if I didn't live those experiences, I could see myself doing those things he was saying. Like I could see that being a part of like my everyday life. I want to ask you guys, Food and Liquor, where does this stand in the pantheon of great debut albums? Like in terms, like comparing it across the field to other hip hop albums, debut albums you've heard, where does it rank in terms? Like don't give me like it's a very broad question, but how do you feel about it as a debut album more so than anything?
On a scale of 1 and of 100, I'm gonna give it top 20, placing it at number 20. Here's why. Okay, he had Jill Scott, Jay-Z, and then those are just kind of like 40 points. It get him to the 40-point mark, and then after that, I gotta go with his production. That's gonna give him like, you know what I'm saying, not 60 points. That's gonna give him like 30 points, and then just his lyricism and like everything from a debut artist in 2006. That's just gonna fill it out 100 for me right there, and I gotta place it over a lot of albums because I don't think a lot of people's albums have Jill Scott in prime and Jay-Z almost prime. Would I say? Dare I say it? Well, prime Jay-Z, pretty much ending out Jay-Z. So
yeah, let's like I said, talking about debut album, to have those two on your debut album, also having Neptune's working on your debut album, but like even just beyond that is the fact that an artist starting out shouldn't be that good, like at rapping. Like
watch the Jay-Z. He washed him. I'm sorry.
That's how I feel.
He washed him, bro.
That's how I feel.
Blender on that track.
That's how I feel. The whole
topic, bro. Him and Kanye did this on "Touch the Sky," and he poked his ass. Like I was like, oh my god, like this is crazy. Like,
but like the extended metaphor where he's talking about like the sewing machine, like he got two pockets in the waist, a little big in the pockets, two pockets big in the waist. I was like, yo, like I really don't care what Jay-Z got to say after this. Like not to say Jay-Z didn't have a good verse. Jay-Z had a very good verse, but like that's just how incredible Lupe Fiasco, young Lupe Fiasco, on his debut album, rapping with his mentor, the guy he looked up to the most, the guy he said to help evolve his sound and his style of rapping. He came on track and outdid him flat out. And he had a lot, like I said, we talk about a lot of timeless music on this album. We talk about how Daydream is one of y'all favorite songs all time. Y'all talked about how Hurt Me So, American Terrorists are still applicable to today. Like there's just so much this album does that it's amazing that he figured all this out on his first go round. Delon, how do you feel about this album as a debut album?
I feel like there's, of course, it's like a really great album in terms of quality. But I feel like that album, from me, gets so many points for being a debut album because the maturity of it, the maturity of the subject matter, the want to have those bigger artists on there, not as a look at these features that I have, but as of like, I want to rap with Jay-Z type thing, or I just kind of want to make the best music that I can make, and even the subject matter. Because I mean, we can say like 50 Cent, of course, has a classic debut album, but it's not necessarily from a maturity standpoint. Like he is his age on that album, but Lupe is rapping like he's like a 40-year-old man on that album. And also, y'all bringing up like the features that he had on it and like the production. I now understand why he was a Atlantic slave for the next 8 years, because debut that's on the debut they broke out that budget. But definitely up there. There's a couple albums by some legends I hold in higher regard than, mostly because I think a lot of those debuts are overrated. But yeah, definitely up there, definitely above reasonable doubt.
What about you, Tommy?
Okay, so
what?
I knew somebody was gonna catch that. I knew somebody was gonna catch that. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about it later.
Definitely, the way that I look at debuts whenever it comes to this kind of conversation, there's usually either the debut starts here and the rest of the catalog is upwards, or the debut's here and the catalog starts to go downwards. For Lupe, it's all over the fucking place, up and down, left and right. Like, honestly, as much as he's one of my favorites, he has a very wacky discography, to say the least. But I definitely say that probably this is not necessarily his magnum opus, but this is the one that could be enjoyed by the most people. So I'd say, as like for his albums, it's one of his best. But also as a debut, I'd definitely say it's one of the best because it has like everything you want. It has great beats, the hunger in it. This is probably the most hungry he's ever sounded on an album. Everything else after, not that he wasn't trying, but the level of hunger is definitely most apparent here. Again, very topical. There's only honestly like probably 10 albums that I'd probably put over it as like the best debuts. And those are like the definitive classics that everyone says is like some of the best albums of all time. So even to be considered in that conversation, I think it's pretty great.
I had to look it up, DeLon. I had to crunch some numbers real quick because, like you said, I didn't like the maturity of this album, the way he speaks on this album. I was thinking to myself, how old was he when he released this? He was 24. He was 24 when he released this album. So even at the age of 24, that's the things he addresses and talks about is pretty mature for even like the average 24-year-old rapper today. Like, I'm trying to think of like 24-year-old rappers in the game right now. I can see kind of making this making these kind of topics. What you gotta say, Jared?
I'm a 24-year-old rapper.
You know what I'm saying?
Part-time. And that guy, but DeLon really made me laugh. Yeah, Atlantic had to have his ass for 8 years with that type of shit. Okay.
That budget, boy.
Dave, how you feel about this album as a debut?
I think it's a great debut, so I don't agree with DeLon and the vast majority of the things that he said. So I don't think he brought up 50 Cent and to like compare the maturity. I don't think I need you to be mature for like an album to be better. Mm-hmm. So to me, I think my favorite debut album, possibly of all time, is DMX. It's Dark and Hell is Hot. So I won't say X is sounding immature on the album, but the topics aren't the same as Lupe's. Of course, I believe X talks about some very heavy topics on his debut, but not in the same with Lupe. But I don't care that Lupe talked about what he like. That doesn't make it better than what X was talking about.
I didn't say it was better because of that. Let the record show. I said I was impressed by it. I didn't say it was better than because.
Why are you gonna cut the black man off? This feels very like.
Because you put words. But hey, listen, if you was doing this, I'll let you cook. You know, I'll let you cook. We do that, but you did this. I couldn't have that one.
In the silencing of the young black man, but you know that the game is the game. But I think it's a great debut. That's why I asked you guys, like, is this his debut album? Just because I genuinely and thoroughly was impressed that like if this is your first shit, like damn. Like I can only imagine what you're gonna do from like moving forward. But there's so many great debut albums that I just love and like cherish and hold very close to me that I don't know if I can give it like a ranking off top, especially off of listening to it only one time.
Yeah, of course.
But I was definitely stunned and impressed by the talent. But now it's a lot of great debut albums in hip hop. And I don't want to knock. You mentioned like, one, I don't think talking about this at 24 to me seems abnormal, especially like if Lupe is from. I don't want to make assumptions about Lupe, but I'm gonna go ahead and make assumptions about Lupe and his life. My assumption is he grew up from. Most rappers grew up impoverished, kind of go through some type of struggle, things of that nature. So to me, if you're 24 and going through that, then this is how I expect you to talk. Like you've seen life. So maybe you're 24, but maybe you might feel like you're 34 from the lived experiences that you may have. Like I've heard Vince Staples say, like, you know, I'm young, but I'm washed. I'm super old. Like I've done enough. I've been outside long enough that like I've lived 10 lives. Mm-hmm. So I expect that type of content from Lupe if he's living the life or he's lived the life that I think he's lived. So great debut album. Definitely not better than Reasonable Doubt. I don't know what the fuck DeLon talking about. But
I just have an agenda against Reasonable Doubt.
But I mean,
we'll discuss it another day.
He back on the black man. But it's I think it was a beautiful project. I don't really care about of course I love Jill Scott. Her debut album is top 10 of all time in my opinion. Different conversation. So I enjoyed hearing her on the album, but I don't think I really cared that, oh, he has Jill Scott or oh, he has Jay-Z. I was just like, damn, he can really rap. And this is like great content. This is great music. So that didn't like razzle me or whatever.
So I'm gonna ask you guys this, and like to play off of what Tommy said. He said he brought up a point. He brought up a very interesting point where he said most time, we release a debut album, either you trend up from there, like, okay, I know what I did wrong. This is what I need to do to get better. You see the artists progressively get better, and then you get those artists who just put everything, their heart and soul into a project. They pour their entire life's work, like everything they've done, everything they could possibly do to get to this moment, to get their first studio album out. It reaches ahead on their first album, and then they just have no clue what the hell to do next. And it just progressively get worse. Now, Lupe is a weird case where his debut album is a classic. For sure, we've talked about it, how this music stands the test of time. But the cool is seen by some to be just as good, if not better. And then from there, you got Lasers, which he absolutely hates himself that he made. You got the Great American Rap album, which largely gets forgotten by most people that even exist. A lot of people don't even talk about it. Then you have like this, it seemed like a renaissance of Lupe Fiasco when we got Tesso and Youth. And a lot of people adored it, think it was a great project. But the crazy thing is, it doesn't really sound anything like Food and Liquor. Like even like this way he raps, he's a lot more technical. He's using a lot more words per verse, per line in his music. Like you listen to Mural, it's just word vomit. He's just rapping non-stop for 8 minutes. Like that's not what he does on Food and Liquor. Food and Liquor, he's focusing more on telling you something, teaching you something more so than just barring you up. And then you move on to Pharaoh Heights, where it's more abstract. He's still telling stories. And then we get to, like I said, I'm just going down the catalog, and you get to Drogas Wave and Drogas Light. Still vastly different albums from Food and Liquor. So his trajectory, like Tommy said, was all over the place. Did he live up to Food and Liquor? Like the guy listening to the debut album, hearing it and thinking to yourselves like, wow, Lupe Fiasco is amazing. Did he live up to the image or the pedestal you might have placed him on at that time? Or do you feel
gonna say very, very quickly, that's a very, very another general question, and here's why. Rapping wise, hell yeah. Marketable wise, no. Like who just goes, I'm gonna bump some Lupe today, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, no. But like rapping wise, oh, this dude is on fucking fire. Like, I think he lived up to that. But as far as him, and you mentioned it earlier, Jordan, the emotion, it ain't there for me. You know what I'm saying? I think my most recent song I liked by him, and I forgot which tape this was on because it was lost, but that Bitch Bad, Woman Good, that was the last kind of like, I was like, ooh, I'm tuned into this story. You know what I'm saying? This is emotional. I can relate to the bitch being bad, the woman good. You know what I'm saying? Type deal. But marketable, no. That's why he flops when he drops. I'm not going to say he flops.
And he don't sell. He
don't sell when he drop, you know? Yeah. Great artist though. I think top, I don't know how y'all rank y'all lyricists. He up there though. I got him top 4.
He's definitely like my top 3, if not 2. He's one of my favorite writers within the genre. And Dan, you kind of missed it earlier when I was talking about how actually I think you were here for that part where I was saying that there's an emotional connection to Food and Liquor, how he's able to, reach out and touch you through the music. That just really isn't there in his later installments. It just comes in flashes, maybe like a song or two on an entire project. But for the vast majority of his music now, it's more so focusing on just rapping and being very good at rapping and showing how good of a rapper he is. Delon laughed at me because the House EP that he released are one of those songs. He's rapping about like the inceptions of dinosaurs and how they started out from eggs and how they evolved and how they eventually got wiped out, which is a cool concept. It's cool to rap about the inception of dinosaurs, their lifespan, and how they ruled the earth and then how they were wiped out. What the hell does that got to do with anything? What does that got to do? What does that got to do with like my everyday life, my everyday experiences? How do I take what you told me in this song and apply it to my life or even like anything like that? His music is so these days void of that emotional appeal that the earlier albums have, to the point that, in my opinion, listening to him then, if you told me on Food and Liquor, like, this guy's really good at rapping, he just out-rapped Jay-Z. He's gonna be an even better rapper 5, 6, 10 years from now. I would have believed you. I was like, how do you get this much better than that? At that point, when I first heard this album, I couldn't fathom that. And he somehow has become even better at rapping. He's become even better at rapping now than he was then, somehow, shape, form. But like Jared said, I think this plays a part in it. His music just stopped reaching people. Like how Daydreaming, we talked in Agnasia about how we feel about that song. He Say, She Say, all these songs that touch us. He hasn't really made songs like that reach out and grab his audience like he used to. And it just gets lost in translation between him and the consumer. So he lived up to his rapping potential. He went on to become one of probably the best rappers in rap. But I feel like he kind of lost his soul a bit in the music. Tommy, what do you feel about that?
Okay, so generally unpopular opinion, I think that Tetsuo and Youth is his best project. That's probably like top 20 favorite albums of all time for me, like regardless of genre. Mm-hmm. I can see why people wouldn't like it though, because, and this is my theory, when he dropped Lasers, which is a super poppy, like electronic mashup album that he didn't want to make, diving into what he was trying to go for, you can see that he still kind of had that emotional appeal between him and the listener. But because that album was so poorly received, and kind of a Food and Liquor too, it was kind of like a lessened version of that, and it still wasn't that well received. I think when he moved on, he kind of saw, okay, this really isn't working so much anymore, so I'm just going to go full into what people know me for, and that's just writing and talking about societal topics. Like, through all of Tetsuo and Youth, like, he talks about like geometry and like life science. He talks about the prison industrial complex, and like an absolutely amazing song. Mural is another amazing song. He talks about like moving drugs through like a woman. He talks about a bunch of other societal topics that I don't think anyone could relate to, but he's still telling a story that you can look at. It's less like reading a personal diary and more like reading like a magazine article where you still see what's going on, but there's not like a personal appeal. But in terms of living up to the hype, I think he has. And you met, I forgot, I think it was Delon that mentioned it earlier, that he's kind of like Eminem now, where his albums are kind of like a platform to just show how good of a rapper he is. But I think he's a million times better than Eminem because he says a lot of words that actually sound really good. Like, it sounds appealing to the ear. If you listen to, I forget what it is. I think it's like King Nas off like Drogas Wave, like a random deep cut from that album. The way that he flows on that album, you can tell that he's like a god tier MC in his bag when he just wants to rap, which for some people, I can see why that's not appealing. You might want a little more personality and like more, I guess, soul to it. But I think that he's lived up to it, to the hype of just being a rapper.
I absolutely love Tetsuo and Youth. Prisoner 1 and Prisoner 2, like, that does have that emotional connection. Like, I love this song. That's one of my favorite Lupe Fiasco songs, by the way. Like, rapping from the perspective of those who are struggling within the jail system and how it's slowly, how their mental state is slowly deteriorating, how they're slowly giving up, and then it raps from the perspective of the jailer who has to go there every single day. So he technically is in jail every day too, just like the prisoners, and how he starts to resent those behind the bars, because some of them guys actually get out of jail and they leave the prison system and they never have to go back. But the jailer, he has to go back to their prison every single day. And I was like, wow, I didn't even think of it that way. Like that and Little Death talking about different ways in which you die. Like, there's like, die from, physically, mentally, spiritually. Like, there's a lot of things on the album, and that's probably
Adoration of the Magi too.
Oh,
yes. that was
that's a gem. Wait, what's that one where he I think he has Ty Dolla $ign on the hook, where he's literally rapping about, he's rapping about delivering pizza. And at first you're like, why is he rapping about delivering pizza? But then you realize it's like a metaphor for like troubled like neighborhoods and how the pizza man would feel delivering there. And you're like, oh my God, this is like, this is deep as hell.
Yes. My God. I also like Tron. Like,
that man Lupe just be bored. He just
be coming up with shit. I thought the Tron they resurrect over new. I thought that was very very cool, like passing the torch because he had Absol on the song because like the whole symbol, the whole thing is like when I go the next guy up, and like so it's like he's rapping, then it's like he's pretty much saying Absol is next up. I thought that was pretty cool, him passing the torch moment on Tron. But yeah,
I don't think Lupe could ever say "Let me put my mouth where you potty boo" on an album, man.
No. Like I said, I don't think he's the true successor to Lupe, but I think it's cool that he felt that way, and it's cool that he dedicated a song to being like, yeah, this is the guy. Like this is like my spiritual successor, even though he's far from that. We could talk about Absol and his misses on another day. Daniel, how do you? Well, I like to say you're not as familiar with Lupe Fiasco as the rest of us, but
I want to say I still got an answer though.
Yeah, okay. What you got here?
So even though I haven't listened to his full catalog, for me, I just feel like when I hear people talk about Lupe, they speak about him like some just ultra god tier level MC that like no one can like reach. He's supposed to be the greatest writer of time. Niggas is not seeing him with his pen. Blah 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 blah. So to me, no matter how you may perceive the albums afterwards, it sounds to me like he lived up and maybe surpassed the expectations of his debut. And even outside of that, listen to what you guys are saying and how I guess diverse his catalog is. For me personally, I don't want an artist to make the same album over and over again. I think that that comes from a place like to me, getting comfortable is like adjacent to being like complacent, and complacency is like a sin or the greatest sin, I think. And it's just like a musical sin, at least.
Yeah, especially.
And yeah, I just don't want it. Like DMX is probably one of my favorite rappers, but I will say he tried to continuously remake his debut, and it was like I can't say there was like much growth in the music after the first album. They're great projects, and it's a diverse body, but like nothing was different. So that's one of the reasons I think I always loved Kanye growing up, because everything sounded different. So even if I had an issue with an album, I knew it didn't sound like the last album. And to me as a listener, that's like the best thing you can do for me. Because if I want to hear your old shit, I'm just going to listen to your old shit. But I'm listening to something new because I want something new. So it sounds to me that's something what Lupe does. And you said you give your all to your debut, but I know artists often say, their debut is their lived experience up until now. So if Lupe was 24 at the debut, this is my 24 years of life here. So if the next album comes out in 2 years, I don't expect it to be as layered as what it took you 24 years to make.
But yet somehow, some way, his next album did end up being as layered as the first album. It speaks to just how incredible Lupe Fiasco is as an artist. Delon, what about you? Did Lupe Fiasco live up to his debut?
Complicated. So
very much.
I think skill wise, yeah, he got better, of course. I think the important thing is that he made the music that I love for the rest of his career, even though like some of his later albums, like as much as we talk about how amazing Drogas Wave is, I can't conceptually wrap my head around that album without reading. So I'll admit it. But also the same for The Cool. Like I told Jordan, somebody else like a couple weeks ago, like The Cool is an amazing album. This is an amazing concept. I can't get what everyone else is getting from The Cool without reading about what The Cool is about. But anywho, yeah, I get the music that I want from Lupe. But more importantly, I feel like Lupe is where Lupe wants to be, and I feel like he could have been a bigger artist, but he is where he wanted to be. By example of him hating lasers and the success that came with songs like The Show Goes On that he just doesn't love. But on the flip side, I don't know if he completely lived up to all that kind of stuff, because like I remember he released Food and Liquor. This might have been after The Cool. But then there was the talk of Child Rebel Soldier with Kanye and Pharrell. And I just can't imagine like another person in there, if it was the rookie year, then the rookie year, but the sophomore year, being put into a group with Pharrell and Kanye, especially at that time. And the albums that was supposed that Child Rebel Soldier is like my favorite thing that never happened in hip hop. But yeah, I just seeing that projection after year one, and then what didn't happen after that. I mean, kind of disappointing. But I'm not disappointed by what we got. I'm disappointed in that and some things that like could have come from that didn't happen.
Speaking of things in rap that never happened that you wish did and been your favorite. Do anybody in here know All City Chess Club? Does that name ring a bell?
Yes.
No.
So All City Chess Club was going to be like a super group, and it was formed by, I think it was Kanye and Pharrell. Was it Kanye and Pharrell?
It was All City Chess Club was Lupe and Pharrell.
Yeah, it was Lupe and Pharrell, and basically underneath them was like Wale, I think Cole.
Wale, Cole, Diggy, Blue Exile. Yeah, that's it. I had two more names than you, but it was Asher Roth was there. Charles Hamilton was there.
Mm-hmm. It was a bunch of blog era rappers, and basically their plan was that they were going to basically start doing a bunch of albums and projects together. So like they were gonna have like All City Chess Club, and there's gonna be like a compilation album of all those guys on there, and they're gonna start making music together. If you remember the song by Lupe Fiasco, "I'm Beaming," if that song does ring a bell, look up "I'm Beaming" remix, and it's like almost all of the All City Chess Club members on that one song. So you got Cole, Charles Hamilton, and Wale all putting a verse on there. So that give you an idea of who all was going to be involved with that process. But of course, they were all on separate labels, so they could never get things to work together for them to do projects and albums together. So that All City Chess Club ended up falling apart. So yeah,
Cole and Diggy started beefing.
Yeah, Cole and Diggy. Yep, they started beefing. So the only real thing we got from that is that "I'm Beaming" remix with all of them on it. Other than that, we didn't get too many things from that thing. They even had a website. It was like the All City Chess Club website, and like every time any members did a song together, they would post it on the website. It was cool as hell. I used to go there every single day and like say, "Oh, I want this anybody from the All City Chess Club make a song." But shout out to Lupe from that. That's all the questions I have. That's all talking points I have. You guys have any closing thoughts about food and liquor, Lupe in general?
I actually got a. Oh, if you want, you go first. Oh, okay. One thing that I will say, we mentioned earlier about Touch the Sky, how kind of Lupe got that first initial mainstream push through that feature on like arguably one of Kanye's best songs from that era. And Kanye actually has a few like production credits on Food and Liquor, but him and Kanye were kind of like a bit of a team starting out, but over time they didn't really have that backing outside of like Child Rebel Soldier. And do you think that Lupe would have been commercially more successful or might have kept that personal edge if Kanye kept that backing with him, either with like, good music or anything like that?
I'm gonna tell you, it'd been hard to be it'd be hard for your name to be attached to Kanye West in any shape, form, or fashion, like in the late 2000s, even like early 2010s, and not do you some good. Like there's a lot of people in good music and that people cared about or discovered solely because of Kanye. I like Sahai's a phenomenal MC, but I only know him because of Kanye. To be honest with you, that's why. So yeah, I feel like if they worked as a team and he was still doing his production, because sometimes I think I don't really like a lot of Lupe's production choices after the Cool. If he was still like working close with Lupe, if Lupe was still working close with Kanye after the Cool and doing things with him, I think that would have kept him grounded. Because because Kanye was pretty grounded at that point himself.
I agree with Jordan.
I want to say.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Get it off the
What you about to say, Jared?
Oh, okay. I think I agree. I agree with you, Jordan. Like, definitely, I didn't even know he had production credits on that. And then going back to what DeLon said, yeah, they had to get that check off his ass. But man, I think if he would have stuck with it, he definitely would have had way more societal appeal. And that just goes back to that whole thing I was talking about that one time, that whole radio real estate thing. Just who your name's attached to and what label you're with and what songs they're making. They probably could have made way more catchy songs. A song that it was catchy to me that was off of Dragus Wave, I think, was Stack That Cheese. It was very simple, very simple. He didn't do too much. And I was like, why didn't this get played on the radio? I mean, of course, the message is talking about being an independent rapper and doing all this other shit. But I think if he definitely would have stayed with or kept up with, we never know what goes on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Way bigger household name. I mean, he's a household name, but like just way more impact to what we have today. He'll be more relevant.
Yes, most so. That's the best way to say it.
I want to say, I think, does Lupe want to be relevant? So I think we sometimes get caught up in this act of like, or idea of relevancy. Like we compare these people like, oh, Hov became this or Ye became this, but they wanted that. I don't think, from what I see, I don't think Lupe wants that. I always think of Mos Def, who also has a better debut album than Lupe DeLon, but whatever.
No, I love that.
So I think of acts like Mos Def, and like I know he didn't want that, so he didn't chase that because he just said, this isn't for me. Like, I'm insanely gifted at this, but that's not for me. Or we think at like Outkast at their height. I know Big Boy talks about like how much money they lost from Andre waking up one day and saying, too many people don't want to do this, and then walks away. So I think sometimes we have to ask ourselves, I don't think these artists, maybe our expectations for them are different than their expectations for themselves. But to them, I don't think they didn't live up to their potential or what they were going to be. Because like I said, Lupe is still heralded and renowned as like this master MC, this master lyricist, top 5 dead or alive. So maybe those were his ambitions. Maybe his ambition wasn't to go triple platinum and do an arena tour with Ye. So I think we got to put things in perspective sometimes.
Daniel, I really like that. And let me tell you why. You were so right about that, because we've been talking this whole time about, we're here talking about it. It must be good. And we're able to name songs we still listen to on the daily by the man. So maybe, yeah, I like that. That really just changed my whole mind on what I said about being relevant. Like, I'm like,
that was a good point. That was a really good point.
Like, he's still God MC.
The only thing, because like I said, Lupe never really listened to his music. He doesn't strike me as a type who just really cares about fame and care about being like the biggest artist on the planet. Hence the fact that he absolutely hated the fact he had to make Lasers. So that's what Lasers was. Lasers was an attempt to make him bigger than he was, and he didn't care about making pop songs. He didn't want to make that song with Trey Songz. They made him make that song with Trey Songz. I don't know why they listen. I don't know who on their label heard Lupe Fiasco and thought to myself, he needs Trey Songz on the track. I don't know what A&R thought that was a good idea, but he rejected those kind of pushes that the label did. The only thing that makes me think he kind of do care is when he be on Kendrick Head, and he'd be like, yeah, that's the kind of acclaim and attention I should have been getting. I think more so he cares more so about being recognized by his peers as a great talent and like being an all-time, like one of the best, more so than actually just being famous. I think he more so just wants people to recognize how good he is at rapping, which is, hence why he's now most of his style now is him just showcasing how good at rapping he is than actual like emotionally appealing. But what you about to say, Delon, to close it out?
And that's kind of my opinion on it. So mostly what Daniel said, also didn't say he had a better debut on the Mos Def. Daniel, you're doing that thing again. But
no, I was just giving greater debut albums.
Listen,
but go ahead.
All right. But anywho, so I feel like I said earlier, I think Lupe is exactly where Lupe wants to be and he's comfortable with. But I don't think he necessarily would have shunned being like an ultra famous rapper, because especially when you bring up Kendrick, I think that he would be okay with whatever level of stardom his music brought him if his music brought him there, the music that he wanted to make. And that's kind of why I don't think he would have gone with a Kanye, because I don't think he seems like I'm not going to say a coattails artist, because you're just signed to an artist, that's just how it works, but he just definitely seems like a person who wants to get it on his own, which could I don't like to assume, but I'm going to assume cause like a little bit of a hostility with a Kendrick, who made the music that Kendrick wants to make and is now top 2 selling rappers. So I think he's perfectly fine where he wants to be. I think if he would have got there on his own accord with his own music, like his trajectory brought him to his first 2 albums, I think he would have been fine with it.
All right. Well, I'm gonna say what Tommy, Daniel, Jairus, glad to have had you 3 on to talk about food and liquor. This was an amazing experience. It exceeded my expectations for what it'd be, and this was a lot of fun. Hope to have all you guys back on again. We do this again. I don't know what the next album we're gonna do this for will be, but
back on both sides.
Hey, it can be. It can be. We're gonna talk about it though. But thank you all for tuning into another episode of Papa the Man Podcast. Tune in next week for another episode of your favorite podcast.